Welcome, folks. We're back. David, how are we doing?
All very good. Thank you, Trevor. Good to see you. And we got Series 2, Episode 6 or something. But this one is a special one, certainly as far as we're concerned. Trevor, who we got on?
He is, for you guys in the England camp, a big hero, I'm sure. Thanks to Robert Taylor at LTI Technologies for this introduction. I think Robert goes back some way with this guest. An ex-RAF pilot, 12 years as an international and club rugby player, and now successfully running his own strategic consultancy business, which we'll talk to about him in depth. It is Mr. Rory Underwood. Great to see you. I'm sorry that our followers...
Is that the right thing to say? Great to see me. You're not going to be able to see me.
Well, this is it. But we always think about our followers as well, not being able to see me and Dave, which is always a blessing. So there we go. It's brilliant to have you on. So look, many of our followers are of a certain age, and many of them will know your background. We'll go into that in a little bit more detail, I'm sure, as the conversation follows. But we want to really get straight into what you're currently doing now.
Okay.
And you've got this consultancy called Wingman. You operate as a small business owner and operator yourself. You know the flavour of what this podcast is about business finance and the difficulties and trials and tribulations. But look, let's get straight to the action. Talk to us about Wingman. What is Wingman? What's it set out to do?
Simple. Currently, Wingman is a strategy consultancy. So I go into mainly the private sector, specifically in the growth area. So 10 million plus, 500 million less, in that sort of area. So it's not into the enterprise area. And basically the simple message about what Wingman does is we enable organizations to deliver their strategy effectively. It's as simple as that. That's what we do now. I'm a small business, as you say. Obviously, we'll talk more about the trials and tribulations of the last 5 years, etc. It's been going 16 years. In April the 1st, in a couple of months, a couple of weeks, it's 16 years I've been going with Wingman in current state. And when I started, it wasn't quite in the guise it is now, which again, I suspect as we talk along, we'll talk about that.
April the 1st, I heard that, but
Yes, well, it's the birthday for the Royal Air Force as well.
Oh, is it? Oh, right. Okay. Right. Well, you learned something. So SME businesses, you said you're not into the enterprise area. So types of businesses are, you say you're helping them to deliver the strategy. Would it be fair to say some of them don't even have a strategy when you engage with them?
And therein lies the journey I've gone into it. So when I first started Wingman, I left a previous company and decided, basically the crash in 2008 happened. So in 2009, we split up and went our different ways. I set up Wingman in my own guise. And there's two things that come out of the story-wise. I knew that if I wanted to grow a business and get it to a position where possibly I'm able to sell it or I could scale it or whatever, those sort of things you don't really think about and realize when you start out a business at the start. A lot of it's just a good idea, got a good think it'll work, few people like the idea, you start earning money, it's great. But actually, if I wanted to potentially sell it and or scale it, it couldn't rely purely simply on me. And so one of the things that I did when I left the previous company, started Wingman, was I wanted to learn to work out how I needed to reduce the RU factor, not get rid of it. My aspiration is to try and get to a place where somebody says, oh, Wingman, is that the company that Rory Underwood started? As opposed to, oh, Wingman, that's Rory Underwood's company. And there's a subtle but big difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
And therefore, what I needed to do was I needed to create some sort of IP and or model and or recurring revenue stream, which didn't 100% rely on me, which therefore enabled it to A, scale, and B, potentially be of some value that somebody else would want to buy. And if I exited, it wouldn't devalue it. And of course, those sort of things don't just drop off trees. Anybody who started a business will know that some of that can be very difficult. Some of the technology stuff and various things that it straight away is an IP, but for a lot of the people that are doing sort of fairly standard type business type offering, especially in the service industry, a lot of it's pretty much there. So trying to find out what your IP is a real interesting challenge. So with my background from the military, from sport, with previously before that, 10 years of doing other consultancy, management, leadership training and stuff like that, dealing with lots of senior management teams, executive teams, director teams, all those sort of different areas. as you just alluded to, basically, metaphorically speaking, half the businesses didn't have a strategy. Well, they did. They just did what they did the year before.
Yeah.
Just, added a few % onto the targets. The other half did have a strategy. It was either stuck on the wall, stuck in a 65-page business plan, stuck in a bookshelf and whatever. And there was very few of them that actually followed the strategy per se. It was more like the strategy is a sentence and that was it. And so when I used to go in to speak to a lot of these senior teams was once I got through the initial part of just helping with simple management and leadership and getting them to be more as effective as a team, once you start, going to the next stage when you have them discussing about the business and talking about business, you soon realize that some of them haven't got a strategy. Invariably, most of them, they don't fully understand what a strategy means. I guarantee you they weren't aligned in their thinking around how they understood it. So there were 7 different versions of it. And what you saw was 7 different versions of that strategy and pushed down through an organization. So systemically, you've created silos organizations straight away. So you end up with this very vertical type driven. That as one of my strategies for the 25 years I've been going from the time when I started in the very, very late 90s, if not 2000s. The speed of communication has exponentially sped up.
Yeah.
What that's meant is both the speed of information, but the quantity of it has increased. And so what you find over the 25 years is there's more information, which more people go, oh my God, that's not working. Let's do something about it. Whereas before it used to be a fax at the end of every day.
Yeah.
It used to be a letter. I mean, you had to respond to it. Well, you took your time to get information, respond to it, send it. So there's days, sometimes weeks, even a fax, you'd go and sort something out, find the information, then send the fax back. Whereas now, obviously, well, I can show it to you guys, but obviously for the listeners, I'm holding up a mobile phone. Now, the information of everything you do can be on here instantaneously.
Yeah.
So, when you get information, people go, it's dropped 0.001%. I better do something about it.
Yeah.
And so one of my theories is that over the years, because of that speed, which has in some ways been great, so the amount and speed of communication, question mark quality, which is another thing altogether, people are starting to react to anything that goes wrong, whereas previously it was like a day or a week or whatever. Yeah. And so the tail's wagging the dog. So that element of trying to hit targets, the stovepiping and silo type thinking mentality of businesses and the speed of communication means that everybody's doing, the behaviors and the way they act. It's all very silo thinking. And so what I find in every business I go into is that there are siloed all over the place. And so what you have is people go, I've got to deliver that. That's the most important thing. Let's work and collaborate. Okay, I'll do that, but I make sure I deliver my bit first. So we have competing priorities.
Yeah.
So the inefficiencies and ineffectivenesses of the way the cross-functional workings across businesses are there and plain to see, in every business I go into. And not through any malice or nefarious intent. It's just that behavior has then been systemically put in the system. Because most people go, well, if I deliver that, my boss is happy, tick, happy days.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can relate to that, and I'm sure you can, Dave. I mean, it strikes me also, though, when you first engage with these businesses, that's only the beginning. I would imagine you take them on a journey, don't you, Rory? You're with them you could be with them for life, for whatever, where that business goes. Would that be fair?
That would be a fantastic manna from heaven, if you get with them for life in the context of a business. But yeah, from the very, very, very early stages of when I started doing keynote speaking, and I hate the phrase motivational talks, but keynote speeches, which was, you get paid a lot of money for being a keynote speaker, for doing a 45-minute speech or whatever. But I didn't actually find it was on stage, yes, you get the interaction of the audience or whatever, but I didn't quite as fulfilling because it's a very transactional sort of situation where you stand up stage, you speak to them, you get a bit of feedback. Afterwards, you bump into a few people, mainly the people who liked it and they want to come up and shake your hand. And if they're rugby followers, big England supporters or Tiger supporters or whatever, it was great. But that was it. Then we sort of went up separate ways and we go off. And that was it. My whole relationship with that company was just literally for an hour or so. And so for somebody who's like myself, who's very much into relationships and developing it and mutually beneficial type scenarios, I didn't find that as fulfilling. Bank balance was quite happy about it, but me myself. So one of the things that, as you just alluded to, is when you develop a relationship and you get that mutual trust, then you can benefit. We benefit because, we become a great service provider that we're trusted and whatever. So we get business on a regular basis. but also they get the benefit of all the work that I do and the knowledge and experience and solutioneering that we do to help them in their journey to get where they want to go. The biggest thing I get a buzz from is going to business, starting out, as you say, take them on journey, which is obviously in the first instance it's the old standard things of, where are we now, and creating that awareness of where are the highs and the lows of what you're doing, to then try and aspirationally think of where do you want to go, and obviously help them get there.
Yeah.
And so when you take them on that journey, there's a whole sort of light bulb moments that go off. And invariably, because of that journey you go through, within several months that you're working with a senior team or whoever, when you start coming into that room and you see the dynamics changing so positively from the way they were when I first started. And they weren't, don't get me wrong, most of the companies I go into, they're not bad. They're not fighting with each other.
No.
But they're still not as dynamic within that room than when you see them afterwards, when they get so much clarity around that's what we're trying to do together, as opposed to this is what I'm trying to do. And so there's all this sort of creating, and sometimes that can be damaging because if people take it personally, and for whatever reason, may not be intent, but that's still maybe taken personally, then it can cause problems. But if you're able to have challenging conversations, which have nothing to do with personality and or the individuals you're speaking to, but it's all about, solving the challenge of running a business, but you can have those challenging conversations without falling out with each other. Those are the ones that you get the real optimum effective way of how teams try and solve things when they're trying to get the best out of everybody in the group.
Sure.
Great. Listen, we are over 10 minutes into the podcast. We haven't mentioned the R word, rugby.
No, don't.
But one of the synergies with sport and business, Rory, I'm sure you can talk from experience. There are a lot, aren't there? And if you think about players that come into any game, but we'll use rugby as the example, and being a player myself and a coach, you can look at 15 brilliant rugby players, but that's not necessarily going to mean they're going to win every game, because there's a lot of strategy that goes into that team. There's a lot of motivation that needs to go into it. There's a lot of management. There's a lot of process. There's a lot of business-like structure that goes in. Don't you agree that how you bring a team from, for example, my experience is how do you turn a losing team into a winning team?
Yeah, I mean, all the stuff that you talk about, very, very relevant. You can have, 11 Ronaldos on the pitch or Messi's or whatever. It doesn't guarantee you success, especially when you're at the top levels and you're playing against teams that are much better. But, the analogy being that you can have individuals who are exceptionally good, but if that team does not coalesce and meld together as a team, it won't be successful.
Yeah.
And that analogy itself. So for me, in the way that I look at the way I put things into business, there's two parts to the things I always look about. One is what you've got to do. And invariably, that's not really, in fact, I'm going to strategy sort of partly the issue, but you've roughly got, you're delivering this, you're making those, you're doing these widgets, you're providing that service, whatever it is. Some companies aren't as clear about that. Not all their employees understand that. And it goes back to a bit I talked about before. Everybody just goes, I know my job, but I don't know what business does. So if you take the context there of when England played during the 90s and the Will Carling generation, that was several years of forming to get the right players. Jeff Cook got the right players, the quality players, but started generating that sort of, this is Team England. This is not just the best players from the English Premiership coming together. This is a team that works together. And that's why we had the success we did in the 90s. We had 3 Grand Slams, got to World Cup final. So, that if I speak to anybody in any walk of life and say to them, to be a successful sporting team, do you need to have, trained, worked together, planned, got the right tactics and be a good team to be able to be successful? Everybody will say yes. If I say to them, I'm a fast jet pilot and I go take my jet and go flying, is it just me? Is it just about me being the solo guy flying in a jet? Or is it about the whole team that's around in the whole Air Force that gets me to be able to take that aircraft fly and go and do it safely and come back?
Yeah.
Of course it is. So the whole concept of that team, now, when you apply that thinking around that to the business world, so how much time do you think we prepare, train, practice, try and learn lots of stuff in a rugby sense? All the training we do against actually doing the playing.
Yeah.
Most people would sort of normally give me on average the figures of 90-10. So 90 practicing, training, planning, all that sort of stuff, 10% of actually doing.
Yeah.
What about flying jets? The amount of time I plan before I go flying, amount of preparation I do, all the stuff I've got to go find information. 90% of my time is done probably in the planning, preparation and training, and 10% in actually doing. If I do a one hour flight, I've got to spend more time doing all prep work. So what about business? Well, guess what happens with the top 90 and 10? it gets flip-flopped the other way around.
Yeah.
So we probably spend 10% of our time planning, training, preparing, all that sort of stuff, and 90% of our time doing. Okay. Now, I'm not advocating here to all the listeners that everybody's got to go and change that, flip-flop it around. The realities of business are such that you can't have that people all the way all the time. But for the sporting world, for the people that want to be the best in playing rugby, the South Africas, the New Zealands, and occasionally England, as well as being the top 2% of the population, being fast jet pilots, that's what our aspiration is. So if you want to be a business and be successful, how do you engender that context of it's not just about doing all the time? There's also a lot of preparation, a lot of training, a lot of working. I always ask the question, why is it that we just throw those 6 people together and just assume, go and sort that problem out, that initiative, whatever it is, and just assume they will naturally work together as a team?
Yeah.
And they will to a certain extent, but invariably it doesn't. They fall out with each other. They don't get on with each other. But it takes time and effort to get those people to be a team, never mind going to the business.
Absolutely. And Rory, you came over from Malaysia when you were 13, is that right?
I was flip-flopped many times, but we lived in Malaysia. I was born in Middlesbrough, and my parents lived out there. Right. So I lived my first 13 years in Malaysia, but started boarding school at 8.
Okay.
9.
So when did you get introduced to the sport of rugby? When did that come into your life?
Not till I was 11. When I was literally, I went to the pre-NEU school, Brignall Grange, up near Scotch Corner, and then for two terms to get used to the British system. Then we went to the prep school at Barney Castle. So I did 2 years of the prep school with my other brother Gary, and then I moved up to the main school. Prep school we played a bit of football, sports, that sort of stuff, nothing rounders, that sort of stuff. British Bulldogs.
Can't do that.
When we were allowed to, yeah. And then when I went to the main school, there was literally winter term, September, first week in Wednesday afternoon, sporting afternoon. So lessons in the morning, lunch, and then sport. It was 1 o'clock and 1:30, wherever it was, in the classroom. And then the teacher had John Moore. He sat down and explained the rules of rugby, drawing the pitch and the lines and the posts and scoring tries and the general rules about lineouts. And so, that was my first introduction to rugby. So I didn't play rugby before I was 11.
Yeah. But obviously you liked the game. You obviously had a skill set of some sort, because like a lot of...
You like the game? That's a very interesting question. So I'd like to interrupt you because...
Okay.
Yes. I grew up in the tropics, and my parents sent me to the English school. And of course it's Barney Castle, which is near where my grandparents were in Middlesbrough. So that's why we went there. It's one of the nearest schools there. So that on exeats and half terms, we could go back to Middlesbrough for those breaks. But Barney Castle is, I don't know, 1,000 feet above sea level or something in the Pennines. And so it's flipping freezing. Yeah. And so you get stuck out on the wing. In those days, we got the under 12s would get all the balls from the first team that moved. I felt we put it size 4 balls, but all the balls were leather ones in those days. Mm. So they were literally shiny brown, blobs, which were, as soon as you got away, just like bars of soap. And it was freezing cold on the pitches. So I did wonder how I did get into it, but the fundamental thing in that situation was that I loved playing sport. I was like, I loved, in Malaysia, we used to play with my other brother Gary, not playing, because Tony's 6 years younger than me. So, early age, he would have been a baby while Gary and I were kicking the football around. So the whole sport ethos was in me. So doing any sport, I loved doing.
Okay.
So I did in that sense, but did I like it? Yes, as a sport, but being stuck out on the wing, in a freezing cold was debatable.
I go where you're going. In fact, my son was playing rugby yesterday, and he was at fullback, and it was bitterly cold.
He was
bitterly cold, and for anybody who plays out on the wing or in the fullback when there's not a lot of action going on, and you look at their skin, it's literally transparent.
You're just a bunch of English wusses, as far as I can say.
We'll come on to that in a minute, Trevor. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that with your career, I mean, for me, sport was definitely a backbone of how I made decisions in my life. I learned about things in sport, and rugby was obviously my key sport. I learned things that I was able to transfer into business. For example, when you took on your first sales team, as I did, the first thing I did was to, as you were alluding to earlier, Rory, is to create that team environment, to understand what everyone's job is, to understand what it is we're doing here, number one, and to get everyone to buy into what we're trying to achieve here. And whether it's a sales target, whether it's, coming to training every week, whatever it is, I learned that there was a structure that unless that structure was in place, then the chances are it was going to fragment and there was going to be difficulties in moving that particular team forward. For example, you might have that odd prima donna. You might have that odd person that thinks they're the bee's knees, but ultimately his or her attitude is wrong. So that's going to drag down that team mentality. Likewise, you might have someone that can't kick the ball properly or is struggling to make that tackle or is having challenges with some part of their job. But as long as you get into them and find out what it is that they're trying to do and trying to achieve and provide that structure around them, then 9 times out of 10, that gives them a good opportunity to move forward. And going back to your experience with your childhood rugby, obviously being a bit cold, but then you managed to move forward. You were a talented individual. You were playing club rugby, you were playing international rugby, you played for the British Lions. So as that process began to develop, do you pick up things throughout that journey that has now enabled you to transfer that into Wingman?
100%. Rugby has been a big part of my life. I've played in different types of teams, different standards. From my first team at Middlesbrough, my first 4 or 5 years, I played at Middlesbrough before I joined the Royal Air Force. Then played for the Royal Air Force, and then moved down to Tigers. Finished off at Bedford for 2 years, and then, as you say, played for the British Lions. And each of them bring a different sort of interesting dynamic to everything you learn. And the whole thing about team sport, it challenges you both from an individual perspective, but also from a teammate perspective. I'm lauded wherever I go, whenever I'm introduced, as being England's record try scorer. I've got 49 tries for England in 85 caps. Woohoo, great. I wouldn't have got those 49 tries if the other 14 people in my team didn't play to their best ability and get me the ball. I'm on the end of the wing. As much as you try and go and look for the ball, and people say that's a new thing, we used to do it in the old days, it still relies on the ball getting to you. And you're relying on the team doing what's best for the team as opposed to what's best for the individual. And therein lies the real dichotomy. You're talking about your sales teams and stuff like that. One of the things I spend a lot of my time working with companies and with teams is getting to understand actually what is a team. Success in business is predominantly, what is a successful team? They made lots of money. That doesn't say it's a successful team for me. It just means they've been successful in earning money. It doesn't mean they've been a successful team.
Correct.
And that confuses a lot of people. They don't get that. They don't understand that. Well, they make money. I know, but when you think about the dynamics of the way those 8, 9, 10, whatever it is, size team, how they work together, how do you know that their success is because of them working as a team or in spite of them working as a team? And most people can't answer that question. There's lots of examples, in the business that I've been doing for 25 years where I can talk about teams that have been, it's been horrendous. The teams have hated it. They didn't like each other, but they came in and just did their work and they hit the numbers. In fact, they exceed the numbers.
Yeah.
So technically you say that's just, it's a, hyper-wing team. And you go, no, it's not. How do you think, how successful that numbers would be if that team was actually a proper team, a high-performance team? Those numbers would be twice as much, or it'd be less the effort to get that work done. So one of the things that, a sales team is one of those things that if you're within the sales world, there are a multitude of different types of sales teams. There are sales teams in there where it's, I don't care about the rest of my teammates. I've got my target. I'm delivering that. It's eat where you can kill.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. But there's other sales teams where they do work more collaboratively together and they do work on, helping each other or whatever. And we won't get into remunerations and all the different things and the problems that cause. But there are different types of sales teams. But if you take out and think generically of the whole world of business, anybody's not in sales, as far as they're concerned, everybody in sales has got the same mentality, thinking, behavior,
Sure.
whatever, where it's all about the individual and, don't care about,
Sure.
Yeah. And I'll use this, I'll get doing it hangmail, but generically the stereotypical image of the double glazing salesman is of that person. I've got a target hit. I'll do that. I'll do whatever I need to hit that. Don't care about the rest of my people in my team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But one of the challenges I give to people is that the different teams and organizations do work as a dynamic in slightly different ways. And if you want to get the best out of them, you need to understand how they work and therefore understand how the people and the individuals in that team work in the right way to get the best and most out of that way the team should work. So one of the things I always talk about is to take a model from one end. I talk about team of champions, champion team. So the two extremes. So a team of champions, they are individuals who are outdone. So you could argue that day 15 DuPonts. That would be a very good team. But 15 DuPonts, okay? And then over here, you've got a champion team. So they could have star players, or they just, as a team, is how they work together as a team that deliver the success. And the first thing I point out, this is, I'm not describing a qualitative model. This is not, you should be this end or that end. Okay. This is just a descriptive model. So where are you on that spectrum? Okay. Somewhere in there you are.
Yeah.
And, the big point I make about it is most people assume that I'm saying you need to be at the champion team end because I've come from a world of sport and the military and whatever. But no, I had to do that because we needed to have the team working ideally. But there's certain situations where there are individual teams that work with individuals. That's fine. You've got to try and work out what is best for what you are as a business, what you are as a team, in how you generate, the success for the business. And you need to get the optimum for the way the team that works.
That's
challenges.
That's really interesting, Roy. I'll just pick you up on one thing, and then I want to talk to you about something else. I prefer 15 Finn Russells, if I'm brutally honest, but that's personal.
As your point is,
you got two Englishmen here on screen. I would just back off quickly.
Don't worry. We're going to get to this. We're going to get to it with what's coming up next weekend. I promise you, we're going to get to it, but not yet. Look, I want to talk to you, Roy, about your business. Let's go to Wingman. And before we came on, we were talking about an interesting subject. David and I, we're on a crusade to a great illustrious extent. And that crusade is to try and get a signpost up for business owners to understand that there is a professional network out there, the Guild of Business Finance Professionals, that will help business owners navigate these choppy waters when it comes to business finance. Look, let me just ask you the question. What's it been like for the last 5 years as a small business owner yourself?
Yeah, the last 5 years has been tough, really tough. Before COVID, I was on a fairly steady organic growth. Mm-hmm. Nothing exceptional. I was just slowly building my business up. I did quite well the year before COVID, thank God, and managed to build up a reasonable amount of cash reserves in the business. And if it wasn't for that, I would not have survived COVID. It's as simple as that. I would not have survived COVID. I had to take out a business bounce back loan.
Yeah.
And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, it was probably the easiest way I've ever borrowed £50,000 in my life.
Yeah.
It was literally very simple, fill out the form. But from our perspective, it was easy. It was in our bank within a day or two. And that just about saved us getting through the sort of the travails of the final elements of COVID lockdown, etc. Fortunately for us, we picked up one new client and one of our old clients, and both those two were in the essential services sector.
Okay.
Both are sort of attached to construction. One was sort of in the plumbing merchant world and one was aggregates. So the fact is they still were operating and they were still dealing. If my major clients were in the hotel, tourism or hospitality,
good grief.
I would have long since vanished in a puff of smoke.
Yeah.
So what was interesting was I picked up some business and we sort of managed to do well. And we did quite well the second year, but to the extent where we were doing so well that I needed to expand. I needed to bring some more people on board. But one of the challenges I had was that I felt I needed to do that. But obviously I also was aware that I flushed out my cash reserves. And so it's a really interesting sort of dynamic of, should I use some of that extra money I'm sort of earning from this to try and start filling up things, or do I bring in a few people to try and help us deliver what we're trying to deliver? And of course, it doesn't make any difference how good a person you are from a business, entrepreneurial or whatever sense. A lot of it is luck and fate. And if we all knew what was going to happen in the crystal ball, there'd be a lot more successful small businesses out there. And we don't. Mm-hmm. We make our best guess and we try and go. I've learned. I'm still learning now. Honestly, I've been doing business for 25 years. I've been my own boss for the last 15, 16 years. And I'm still learning. No political statement here whatsoever. But my biggest concern at the moment is not what and why and when she's doing things, but because of the budget, I'm still waiting to see what is the knock-on impact with the business fraternity.
Yes.
Obviously tends to have an indirect impact on service providers like us.
Yeah.
So whilst I may not see something happen on the 2nd of April, there is potentially things that might happen towards the end of next year, as in this calendar year. And so again, right or wrongly, there's me sort of going, I'd like to think that I'm not 100% risk averse, but there's an element of me going, don't go mad at the moment, because if we end up going into a potential recession, or we go into times of difficult and it doesn't make a difference what it is, and businesses tighten their strings, we're the ones that get hit in the neck. And so that's a real challenge.
It's interesting, you pick up on that, Rory. We listeners who heard the podcast before last that we did with the business owner up in Scotland, dear Neil Cameron, we asked him that very question. Is he prepared for April the 2nd and onwards, the effects of the budget, et cetera, et cetera? And he said one of his insulators was growth, and continuing to grow, continue to take more business, et cetera. Whether that's the right way, I don't know. But it was interesting.
The difficult thing with that, when you say about growth, is what does that mean to some people? Because you say growth, that's you growing as a business, increasing your turnover, and et cetera like that, which is great. You get more money coming in. But if you're in an industry where the factor on that is you've got to invest in either new people, new facilities, new equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Depending on where you are in your cycle, it doesn't have to mean extra turnover.
I agree. I agree entirely. And look, we are politics agnostic on this this podcast. But I'll tell you one thing: it is not growth; it is prosperity. That is more important to me, in my view. Business need to be prosperous. Growth may be part of that prosperity, but that's the key for me. But you might have a different view on that.
Well, we are agnostic on this, and it's something that it's a feeling I've got for 15 years. It's not as if it's just the last 10 months or whatever.
No.
But with as a small business, there's 4 of us working in the business. I got up to about 8 just after COVID, but in the last 5 years, we've shrunk down. The training side of it has virtually stopped. I've concentrated on the consultancy world. I've got some really exciting plans moving forward. But the real challenge in answering some of the questions you said before is, it's all fun having growth, but sometimes it's the old adage, my wife was watching the film Field of Dreams,
good film.
Build it and they will come.
Kevin Costner.
Yeah. Build it and they will come. But of course, as most business owners will know, sometimes you build it and they don't come. So do you wait till they come? And if they do come, it's too late to build it. And there is in a microcosm is the real challenge for any business that's growing.
Yeah.
The decision to do something is not really the hard one. The hardest decision to do is knowing when to do it.
Yeah, I agree.
One of the things I learned very early on when I was trying to get, I need to bring somebody in to help me with the administration side or with the finance side or whatever. It's going, I do need one. Okay, well, when's the right time? Or I might get some business and I need somebody in then. Well, if, like what I do in my model and my the concept and methodology by the way I do things, it takes a while for somebody to come in and just pick it up straight away. They can't. So therefore, there's a lead-in time to do all that. And so I've got to do it before that potentially comes off. But if it doesn't come off, then you potentially waste that investment. And that is the biggest challenge. Anybody's deciding, will that business come in? Do we wait until we get the business and then we go and invest in a new factory or some new equipment or the latest kit?
Yeah.
And then pay that sort of amount of investment. And it doesn't come in. What happens then?
Thank God you're not in farming, Rory.
Well, my father-in-law was a farmer. It's one of the challenges is that, constantly being challenged from that perspective of small business. And the one thing is, I think sometimes one of the things that makes small businesses such a fantastic sector of any PLC of any country is that they're dynamic, small, and people don't realize how many millions of them there are in this country that do, create a lot of wealth, prosperity, and dynamism in our economy.
Yeah.
And, anything that sort of keeps, it's the old, death of a thousand cuts, and of course, the one thing that we're very good at is there's a lot of entrepreneurs. There's the verb and the noun. So I don't class myself as an entrepreneur like a Branson. I'm just an entrepreneur because I'm a small business owner. So I've run 2 small businesses. So that's where I think one thing that we're very adaptable, especially small businesses, because we're adaptable and we're constantly trying to work out how to problem solve and overcome all this sort of stuff. That's one thing that small businesses that are still going are good at doing, because if they don't, they'll go by the wayside and they'll go bust. And so there is that sense of, well, we'll keep throwing things at this small business world because they'll just adapt and cope.
Yeah.
Yeah, but for how long?
Yeah, exactly, Rory. And I talk to small businesses. And when I say small businesses, I'm talking typically sub 3 million turnover, so the real kind of micro end. And I've known a lot of these businesses for many, many years. And sadly, last year wasn't a great year for some of those small businesses that weren't able to get through the challenges that you've just mentioned. We hear a lot from the Treasury. I've worked directly with the Treasury trying to get them to understand what it is that we experience at our end in terms of working with small business. And the same words come out, which is we see small businesses as the lifeblood of our economy, et cetera, et cetera. Well, without sounding one to sound negative all the time, there's a trend. And the trend that I'm seeing is that there are a lot of small businesses that are, a bit like your story, are trying to make decisions about what to do. And there are so many question marks over what's going to happen in the future. Some businesses are just trying to stand still and just make sure that they are doing nothing, just being who they are.
Survival mode.
Yep.
Yes.
You've got other businesses that do want to grow. I was with a business last week. They've decided that they need to grow because if they don't grow, what's the other option? So therefore, they're now looking at taking on debt. And when we get on to debt, that's a big commitment for any business. Yeah. Taking on debt, as long as it's good debt, and part of my job and the job of the Guild of Business and Finance Professionals is we do our due diligence. We have to understand what it is that the debt's going to be used for. First of all, is it going to do what it's supposed to do? So growth is obviously one of the reasons. Is it affordable? Is it going to make the business better as a result? And that conversation and those meetings that we have has become harder and harder and harder. And you got on the other side of what we do for a living is working with the lenders. So forget the banks, but the lenders we work with, the credit teams, they recognise what's going on in the economy, and the appetite to lend is getting harder and harder. And those that are willing to lend, there's a cost and there's a level of security that they now want. We've got two sides of our world, which is one, working with the business, understanding what it does. Will the debt be the right debt for them? And then we've got the other side of going to the lender and saying, here's a business, we've met with them, we've spoken to them, we've done our due diligence, this is going to work for them, here's a debt they want, can you support? And I'll tell you what, and Trevor, you know this from your own experience working with the Guild members, it's become such a hard place to be in right now because we're not getting the acceptances that we want, and the acceptances that we are getting are extremely high rate. Security that's needed is, charges on houses in some cases, not all. But what I'm trying to say is a whole program of trying to move small businesses up to the next level is really hard, really difficult.
Just going back to the question you asked before, the first part of my journey, say 10 years, was I didn't have any debt at all. It was all organic growth, and I was creating, some sort of lifestyle company. I'd like to grow now. I've got no illusions that I'm going to sit still and try and survive. I would love to grow, but there are times in the last 2-3 years where it's been tough, because our world is very much, it's never a constant until you get to a certain size and you've got certain guaranteed money coming in. But we are the vagaries of outside, so micro and macro type economic and geopolitical type things that are going on for obvious, COVID, and then Ukraine, cost of living crisis, then Palestine, and potentially, don't know yet, budget. Yeah. So, all those sort of things. And so the problem I've got is the biggest challenge I have for me is I'm still doing business. I'm still got clients who are using me. As you do ups and downs, been a couple of years of not as much as I'd like to have. But of course, the problem I've got is if I'm trying to run a business, I've got no flex in my system. I've got no buffer because it's all been used. And so part of my growth strategy is, yes, to earn more money, but I want to earn more money because I need to sort of refill my reserves just in case another thing goes off. And of course, when you get slapped with more things to pay, you sort of go, it's harder to get that money.
And you're right, Rory, it's cash generation. I mean, Dave and his colleagues in the Guild, they understand this. They are involved in raising finance for businesses, but they never forget that it's the cash that is king. It is that buffer. It is, you called it a buffer. That's what enables businesses. It's not the finance per se. No one wants finance necessarily. They don't say, oh I need it. I'm desperate to have this. I'm desperate to have that. But as you say, Dave, use the right type of debt. It can help structure a business to provide that essential cash buffer. So
I think also it's one of the interesting things we were just talking about earlier on about whether people like a small business. I've had a few touch points with the company, so I've got a little bit of knowledge about, either asset finance, invoice financing, et cetera, and not everybody's fully aware of it. Everything's, I need to borrow money. Where do I go? I need to go bank. Or also I've got a business friend who lends me a bit of money, and that's about it.
Yeah.
People don't fully understand. But one of the things I've sort of noticed, and please correct me if I'm wrong, especially, yourself for being involved in the guild, is, it's not FCA regulated, which in one way, thank you, because you don't want all the bureaucracy that goes with it.
Correct.
Then the other end of the spectrum is when you get certain stories that you hear about how people do what they do, and you sort of go, Rory, that doesn't look good. Yeah. And that must be the biggest challenge. Yeah. You don't want the bureaucracy, but at the day you want to make sure you do it right. Yeah. But then there are some practices out there where people are taking, and of course it gives a bad reputation. People go, I heard so-and-so did this and this. I'm not going to go use that because I think they're sharp.
Rory, you're touching on a nerve. I mean, Trevor and I were talking before we came on air about FCA, which we won't go into now, but FCA certainly added some challenges. But you mentioned asset finance, you mentioned invoice finance. Underneath the banner of business finance, believe me, there are so many different types of financial options now, so many different lenders. And one thing that the Guild is trying to do is when Rory Underwood wakes up in the middle of the night thinking, what am I going to do about getting some money into my business? He shouldn't have to worry. All he needs to do is to ring the Guild, and either you come through to someone like me or someone within probably geographically nearer to you, that you can then just pick that phone up and say, I need to talk to you. And that individual will be able to go through all the different products, all the different terms, all the different costs, all the different types of security, and then come back to you and say, Rory, this is the advice we're going to give you. This is how we think we should move forward. Now, if you decide not to take that advice, that's fine. But at least before you've committed to it, you've had that guidance and someone's held your hand to that point.
Yeah. Well, look, as a sales pitch goes, that's very effective because I'm sitting thinking, I've never heard of the Guild. All I know is that there are lots of, as you say, business finance people out there. And as you say, there are loads of different machinations of those. Which,
correct.
Yeah. Most people don't know what they all are.
Correct.
But being able to have any discussions with people without any commitment or whatever, just having some good quality advice, especially from a Guild which recognised.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And it's a good team analogy, Rory. When you two boys have messed around on a bit of green grass in the past, I'm sure your managers, your coaches have tried to put the best people on the pitch they possibly can. That's a great analogy for the Guild. That's what we've done. We vet our members. We take references on our members. We haven't got to it yet, but if they don't behave, they won't be a member of the Guild.
Yeah.
And you talk about the FCA regulation and all the rest of it. We want to self-regulate ourselves. Most importantly, we want businesses to be able to find a trusted source without commitment that can, as David says, offer guidance, offer advice. Our members collectively did business with nearly 200 lenders last year. I'll repeat that, nearly 200 different lenders. How on earth can you, as a business owner, even begin to know, A, who they are, and B, where to find them?
Yes, you wouldn't.
And
you wouldn't.
And the other thing, Rory, that we just struggle with is that nobody should be going directly to a lender. There are lots of lenders out there that have big budgets and they have lots of social media activity. And you can imagine some businesses seeing the social media coming into their phone, as you spoke about before, how much power that phone holds. And they go through to the lender and they get the lend, whatever it is they want, which is great. But I've seen this and I've seen the rate that they've been charged and I've seen the fees that they've been charged. And I go white, literally, because I just think if you'd have come through someone like myself or any Guild member, we would have told you that this is probably not the best fit. Because the loan size or the cost of it or the fee size or the terms. And as Trevor said, we're not regulated, but there is a regulated way of working in the Guild. And, we want the Rorys of this world to wake up and even if it's not now, if it's not something that you want to do now, but something you're thinking about in the future, as they say, putting the planning in place is a good thing. Then by picking up the phone, you'll have someone. I mean, it's like the independent financial advisor. Yeah. You shouldn't be going to your bank to get a mortgage. You should go for an IFA. They'll tell you what the best mortgage deals are that are on the market.
I will take up on that and talk about it. Because, from my perspective as a small business, as I said to you, it tends to be cyclical. So the old sine wave. And if two things, with the money you can go out and the money you can come in, if they don't sync up, guess what? You've got this. And if you've got no cash reserve, it causes you all sorts of problems. And I'm in the same situation.
Rory, you need to do it. And I'll tell you why you need to do it. If you listen to the 3 episodes we recorded with business owners who were introduced to Dave and me by a member of the guild, those business owners now treat those guild members as a vital part of their business.
Yeah.
They're not on the payroll per se, but anything to do with finance, and let's be honest, you've got better things to do than worry about the financial well-being of Wingman. You want to go out, generate business, etc., etc. If you can find a trusted pair of hands,
seriously, if you can take that off my plate, then that makes my life so much easier. Because I'm worrying about, I've got 3 people I've got to pay mortgages. I'm still trying to run a business and grow it post what's happened the last 5 years. I can get there's some other people that have been successful, but I know there's lots of people that have gone by the way. And anybody who has managed to survive the last 5 years, I've got big respect for.
Absolutely.
Well,
Mr. Underwood, we will make it so for you. Now, listen, I want to change the subject slightly here. I want to take you back to a date. 6th of March, 1993. England v Scotland. Mr. R. Underwood, Mr. T. Underwood, both scored. England ran out 26-12 winners. Care to explain yourself?
Well, I'll give you a little stat on that.
I've got further on it, but go on.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. That particular day, my mum had been picked out in the crowd many, many times before, but for some reason, that was the particular one that
I remember.
Really took off. I thought I'd mention my mum sometimes when I go and start doing the odd talks here and there. And people, you can imagine there's a certain age group where they sort of go, what's Mr. Cornway's mum for? And I was going to say, just go into YouTube, put in England, Scotland, 1993, Underwood's brother's mum.
Yeah.
We'll see her doing, and my wife's there as well. So there's all the sort of rugby family were there. My wife was beside my mum, but basically my mum was doing a 1-person Mexican wave.
Even before Mexican waves were known.
Yeah. But it's wonderful. I mean, I literally, the rugby family around the world, and at some point, if somebody's recognized me, come up to me, one of the first questions they tend to ask me is, how is your mum?
How's your mum? Yeah.
So I think something like the game went to Sky platform, sort of mid-late 90s. And obviously a lot of the TV was, that they weren't on the normal terrestrial TV. And in something like the 2000s, they did a straw, I think Telegraph it was, did a straw poll of the most recognizable faces in rugby union. As you can imagine, some like Martin Johnson or Lawrence Gallagher came, Johnny Wilkinson.
Yeah.
It's just a long time ago, but I believe my mum came.
I mean, I can't remember. Was it Bill McLaren? I don't know. I don't know who was the commentator. But
it'd be either Bill McLaren or Nigel Starmer-Smith, something like that. But, she epitomized every single, parent, never mind mother, that was stood in the stand watching their royal girl playing for their country. And having 2 of your children playing on the pitch, I think we played 19 times together, Tony and I.
Yeah.
So, it's fantastic.
So Rory, look, everybody knows you for rugby. We haven't talked an awful lot about it, but I would like to touch on it. I'm intrigued with your RAF career. My father's ex-services, God rest his soul, though, the senior service, I hasten to add. But the military is a disciplined world. You get told what to do, when to do it, and all the rest of it.
It's one of the misnomers that frustrates the hell out of us, all of us military people.
Okay. Far right.
There's no way that an organization in trying to run military operations is purely done by authoritarian do as you're told, which you could argue is the way the Russians are operating themselves in Ukraine. And especially if you take the scenario of me flying in my jet, I'm on my own. I'm captain of the aircraft. Nobody tells me what to do.
Yeah.
And if I describe, when you say discipline, and that phrase has been used before, you're told what to do and do as you're told. That does not work. From our perspective, when we talk about discipline in the military, we talk about self-discipline.
Yeah.
The reliance of each of us to trust each other and do what we need to do so that we try and, make any chance of any fatalities or injuries as minimal as possible for the success of the mission. That's where we rely on each other to just do their job and do what they need to do. And it's one of the areas that does frustrate me at times. And, the whole thing around, so let's describe military. So we have a hierarchical structure. Okay. Is there a hierarchical structure in most businesses? Yes, there is. Is there a difference paid between people of senior director level down to the junior most person? Yes, there is. Okay. There is a sense of difference, slightly different. You salute people of a senior rank and air rank. Yes. We're saluting, as was the Queen in my time, but obviously the King now, because it's the officer, it's a commission from Her Majesty and His Majesty.
Yeah.
When we're saluting a senior rank, we're honouring the King. So there's an element of that deference, that point of view. And to a certain extent, the orders come down from top about strategic, we're going to do X, Y, Z in this area, that area of operation, whatever. And it's passed down to all the different other sort of levels of hierarchy down through to go and do the operation in Kandahar, in Syria, in wherever. Well, that's strategically how business works. The senior team work out what they're going to do. They pass on down through their machinations of all the way the organization works, down to the people at the bottom who then go and do the actual tactical operational stuff at the bottom. That's not a million miles away from the way business works.
And that surely then is the elements of where Wingman's come from, where your strategy, or what's turned out to be called Wingman, but where your business strategy philosophy has come from, surely.
To a certain extent, there's several things. People complicate it. I go into lots of businesses and they over-engineer too much. Either it's bureaucracy or it's just trying to complicate it too much. Whenever they want to put this solution in, rather than putting a simple solution in that does the job, they try and make it massive and convoluted and people don't work. So, one of my mantras is KISS, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
The second thing is make it pragmatic for the size of business. There's no point if I've got a 10, 15, 50 person business and I go and bring the best this process in from, Marks and Spencer's or the NHS or wherever and use that because it's not pragmatic for the size of business you are with the number of people you've got.
No.
And the final thing is, from my perspective, is part of it, what makes it complicated is if it's too conceptual, too blue sky thinking, a lot of people I'm busy. I don't want to spend too much time trying to think A, B or C or D and then try and work out the machinations of that.
Sure.
Just like it very simple. So I can just do this and if this, then that. And that sort of scenario. So keeping it simple so people can just get their teeth into it and use it. So a lot of what we try and provide into it is keeping things simple. So hence with a strategy, with your question, I've been to some places where they've got a 65-page business plan talking about their strategy. There's no way on God's earth the whole of the business is going to understand that.
I agree.
Part of what we do is keep it simple and we just try and create a high-level strategy, which is a one-page document.
Yeah.
But that one-page document gives you enough information that everybody goes, okay, I now know what my business is trying to do and roughly what the North Star is. As long as we make our decisions based around that sort of document, we're on the right trajectory. But when you've got a 65-page document and you've got 35, different priorities and everybody's got their own priorities the most important. So you end up with thousands and thousands of the priorities everybody thinks is their most important priority. Guess what? You get analysis paralysis and you get stalemate across levels of organization.
Rory, look, we could. I think this could go on for on and on and on. I've certainly enjoyed listening to your absolute clarity of thought and how well you have voiced it, and I think that is going to resonate so much with so many people. And I wish you, and I will say, continued success. You are successful, and I'm sure you are going to have continued success, and more of it, and just that. I felt the hairs on the back of my neck coming up when you were talking about just you as a small businessman yourself, and the challenges that you faced and what you're doing to overcome them. I think that's hugely important. Dave, I'm conscious of the time. Yes. What, if anything else, do we need to ask?
Thank you, Rory, for everything. I mean, I've got 100 million rugby questions I'd love to go with you, but they're not today.
Speaking of which, gentlemen, we have a little matter of the Calcutta Cup coming up, and I'm not interested in your strategy or plans or anything apart from where are you on the scoreline, please?
Well, listen, can I just say to Rory, Trevor's already given the score on the last podcast. Trevor's score prediction is 26-16 to Scotland.
If you'd asked me before this game started, I would have said it would have been very difficult to either go for a draw or not go for a Scotland victory. So the last two games, both in the way the Scots have played and the way the English have played, I do wonder whether that's slipped in our favour. Well, at some point, we've got to stop this run of 4 games in the Six Nations.
Come on, let's have a score, Rory. Just
people just don't want to hear what they think the score's going to be. They like to hear what my thoughts are on the game.
Go on then.
Well, to be honest with you, I've been doing this ever since I've retired, and you try and guess on a score, and I think my flipping prediction score must be either 50% or even worse. Just because I played the game and I'm regarded as a pundit, my level of accuracy is very poor, like most pundits are. I just think that the way that England are playing, the way that they have improved, as much as the frustration against Ireland. But yes, France could have had the game taken by half time if they'd taken the chances, but they didn't. And England came back and showed the last 20 they could actually do it. I think that's going to massively, hugely boost their confidence. And just the way that Scotland have played okay, but they haven't played as well as they have been in the past. I'd probably say potentially the same score as yours, but the other way around.
Oh. Well, I've gone 25-19 to England. And you're right, Roy. I think if you compare both teams at the moment, an England victory is more likely. But as you say, who knows what happens on the day? Will it be raining? Will someone get sent off? Really looking forward to the game on Saturday. I think it's going to be a really good game. And I'm actually enjoying the Six Nations.
It is good, especially, everybody's given Italy such a panning for so many years. Now they've got a decent fly off. They've always had a decent pack, and generally having a decent fly off makes a massive difference.
Yeah. I
don't think it's a good thing to have something like Wales being, that's as poor as they are at the moment.
No.
The more successful teams, the better the quality of the competition is. That's the beauty of we get beaten reasonably convincingly. Although we had a good first half against Ireland, we got beaten relatively convincingly, and yet we go and beat the favourites for the for the Six Nations, and against Scotland nearly came undone against Italy.
Same as last year, wasn't it? Against Ireland, when we got them at the last minute with a drop goal.
But that's one of the things I say. It's why we love the Six Nations.
It's great, and it's a great entertainment, and long may it continue. Gentlemen, Mr. Rory Underwood, MBE, we've thoroughly enjoyed meeting you, engaging with you. As I said, we could probably go on for another 2 or 3 hours, but we can't. You've got to go and run your business, Dave. You've got to go and brush your hair, and I've got to go and wash mine. But listen, I mean it. I mean it from the heart. The very best of luck to you both this weekend. I've got your number now, Underwood. As soon as that 80-minute whistle goes, you'll either be calling me or I'll be calling you. I don't care which way. I've enjoyed it. Yeah, really enjoyed it.
Thank you, Rory, very much indeed. And
my pleasure, guys. Thank you.
Look forward to maybe catching up with you in the future, and good luck with everything.
Thank you.
Cheers now. Well, that was good.
Mate, I thoroughly enjoyed that. I was a bit concerned about his patronage in the rugby, but, that aside, that was bob on.
And you know what I liked about it much, bearing in mind that the people that listen to this podcast, is I think what Rory did very well was gave a good explanation about what he does in terms of the clients that he works with and the reasons that he does what he does. And there's a long list of reasons, but I think that came across loud and clear. But also he was open about his own business situation.
Yeah.
And that, to me, underlines everything we keep talking about, doesn't it, Trevor, about how many businesses are out there. They have a concern about whether it's cash flow, whether it's growth, whether it's whatever it is. And when we were talking about the Guild, Rory Underwood's ears pricked up.
You've hit the nail on the head there, Dave. I mean, he was very good at what he did as an international sports star. And I don't know how you were approaching it when we were setting out to record the podcast, but do you know what really came home to me? Just what a down-to-earth, decent chap he is, Has his own trials and tribulations running his business, but, he's there, he's fighting, he's pulling through, and just a delight, an absolute delight.
But it gives confidence, doesn't it? As I know that many members of the Guild do on a regular basis when we're talking to business owners, making them understand that they're not the only ones. And
absolutely
not necessarily business finance driven, but as Rory was talking about, whether it's the purpose, the people, the process, as per his Wingman's lift model, whatever it is, there's people out there that they can talk to, and Rory is certainly someone that's doing that, as are we.
Well, indeed. And look, He's open for business. You've heard what he does. You heard how he does it, who he does it with. You can find all about what he's doing, his business, at wingmanlimited.com. That's wingmanltd.com. We'll certainly be endorsing him. I think he's going to go down very well with the members in the guild.
But also a partner. And we've spoken to him about partnering with us, and to have someone in this particular area of business, I think will be beneficial to him and to us. So we're going to work on that partnership, which is great. This is what we're all about, isn't it, Trevor? Creating partnerships.
It is endorsements, partnerships. You know, the common theme with everything I think we do here on the podcast, and it just came home to me, it's just communication, isn't it? The root to most ills are communicate, talk about things, share experiences, and that's stunningly clear and crystal came over in our chat with Rory today. He's a good
lad. Thank you very much, Rory, for your time. And the rugby predictions are now in. So I know everyone's probably getting bored with it, but I don't care. Trevor, you are saying Calcutta Cup victory to Scotland 26-16.
Correct.
Rory has gone the complete reverse. If anybody wants to stick their own predictions up, let's just say if anyone gets it bob on, they get a mug.
They'll get a mug.
Hey. Who doesn't want a mug these days?
We'll have to get a mug off to Rory.
Oh, definitely.
Rug? Mug. I was thinking of my hair then. Mug definitely on the way to Mr. Underwood, and with our thanks and our richest blessings. Right, should we wrap it up then, boy?
Just a big thank you to Rory, big thank you to everyone this month. In fact, this year, Trevor's been great for the podcast. We've had so much support, and we're so grateful for that. The more we can get this out there, the better it is for everyone, as far as we're concerned anyway. So thank you for everyone that's been coming in with their suggestions. Thank you to everyone that's been making their little donations. The $3 a month, it's a drop in the ocean. It's
not even a cafe latte at a well-known international coffee.
But thank you to everyone who's been sharing it on LinkedIn. We do appreciate it. And onwards and upwards to the next episode. And that's it, Trevor. I'm off. I'm going to get my England shirt out of the wardrobe. And
it's probably full of moth holes, but there we go.
And get myself sat in front of a large screen somewhere. Whoever wins, congratulations. It's all about rugby. Nothing to do with who wins or loses.
Speak for yourself.
Good. Okay, mate. Thank you very much for your time.
Good luck at the weekend.
And you, mate.
And sincere thanks to Rory. Okay. Cheers,
Bye-bye.
mate. Bye-bye.